You know, it seems like everyone online agrees on one thing. Modern dating is just broken. But why it's broken? Well, that's where the debate really heats up. Today, we're going to dive into a diagnosis from a corner of the internet known as the Manosphere. We're going to break down their specific take to understand the logic behind why they think the whole system has completely failed.
And yeah, you really don't have to look far to see that frustration. A lot of the time, it just starts with this, a simple, raw declaration of defeat. A feeling that the entire game is just a shit show.
And that frustration, it pretty quickly turns into genuine confusion. You see people on all sides asking some version of the exact same question. Where on earth did things go so wrong?
Sometimes the complaints get specific about a city, but honestly, the feeling is universal. It feels like no matter where you are, the story is the same.
The whole experience is often described like walking through a minefield of just bizarre behaviors. From ghosting, where someone just vanishes, to love bombing, which is that super intense, over-the-top affection right at the start. It's easy to see why so many people just call the whole thing a tragedy. But the source material we're digging into today claims it has a very specific diagnosis for why this is all happening.
So, how do they build this diagnosis? Well, the commentator at the heart of our source material builds his entire case around something he calls the nice guy paradox.
He kicks things off with this story a woman told about a guy she was dating. By her own admission, he was the perfect gentleman, planned every date, remembered all the little things, and treated her, and this is her quote, like a fucking queen. But after all that, she broke up with him.
And boom, right there. That's the paradox in a nutshell. On one side, you have everything a person might say they want in a partner, but on the other side, you have the actual reasons she ended it. No physical attraction, he didn't make her laugh, and the big one, no spark. This disconnect is the puzzle that the commentator sets out to solve.
All right, so how do you explain a paradox like that? This brings us to the actual diagnosis, pulled right from the commentator's analysis of that story and a bunch of others just like it. So what even is this spark? Well, according to this argument, it's not something you can put on a spreadsheet. It's an emotional, almost primal feeling of attraction, the butterflies. And the core claim here is that nice guys, for all their effort, just consistently fail to create that feeling. And this all really comes down to one single core belief in this whole theory, that for women, attraction isn't a logical checklist. It's a purely emotional response. So the theory basically sets up this battle between two types of guys. You've got the nice guy, who is presented as predictable and, well, boring. And then on the other side, the argument goes that what's really desired is that emotional unpredictability, that roller coaster, that's often tied to so-called bad boys. The conclusion they draw is that feelings, not logic, are what ultimately drive dating choices. Now, to back this all up, the commentator zooms in on what he frames as this huge contradiction between what women say they want and the choices they actually seem to make. So first, he plays these clips where women are asked what they're looking for. And he points out the answer is almost always the same. Someone kind, someone funny. But then, he immediately flips to clips where women are talking about their ex-boyfriends. And the words used here, totally different. Pathetic, psychopathic, interesting, toxic. And what's missing, he points out, are the words kind and funny.
And for him, this is the smoking gun. It leads him to this big conclusion, that there's a huge gap between what people say they want and what their actions show they prefer. That they say they want the nice guy, but their history shows a pattern of choosing the exact opposite.
And he's not done. He brings up another piece of evidence from his source material, and he boils it all down to just this one number. That 2%? It comes from a dating app user who claims she's only attracted to a tiny, tiny fraction of men. And the commentator's logic here is, if your standards disqualify 98% of the people out there, the problem isn't a lack of options. He argues this creates a system where this top 2% of men have all the power, all the choices, and really no reason at all to commit. And this all builds up to the final piece of his diagnosis, where he uses a classic business motto to tie it all together and frame the entire debate. He presents this quote to completely reframe the situation. The dating world, he argues, isn't a search for a soulmate, it's a marketplace. And in this marketplace, he says, men are the customers. The logic of this metaphor is pretty straightforward, right? If the customers, in this case men, are consistently walking away and not buying the product, then simple market logic says the problem isn't with the customer. The problem, this source argues, must be with the product itself. And that really leaves us with the huge question that this whole perspective brings up.
Is it actually helpful to think of dating as a marketplace, driven by supply and demand? Or does looking at it that way completely miss the point, the search for a real, genuine human connection? That's the tension at the very heart of this diagnosis.